year scholarship to college. I mean, there's so much money and opportunity, and my daughter comes home from these, and the first thing she says is, what am I going to do next year for science fair? And that's exciting, and more students should get that opportunity. And I have to say, it's kind of embarrassing when we go, and when we went down to Delaware Valley after winning at Lehigh, all these schools are sending busloads of students. Buses, I think I saw a bus that said Bethlehem on it. And teachers are there from their districts. I mean, huge numbers. And there were, I think, maybe 3, 4, or 5 kids from Easton. And in fact, I had to argue with the 10th grade principal that it shouldn't be a vacation day to go to a science fair. So I really don't understand when I watch these kids. And these science fairs don't start in 8th grade. They start younger. And why do all these other schools send kids starting from 5th grade and on and have this huge focus and dedicate teachers and buses and all of this opportunity to science fairs, and Easton doesn't really do that? So I think if you want to get kids excited about science, you have to show them science, show them other kids doing science, show them what comes from it, give them opportunity to win money. As I said, it wasn't a lot of money, but boy, my daughter is so proud of that money that she won. So there are a lot of opportunities to really, bring it into their lives, and I'd like to see more opportunity for science fair going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else this evening on academics? If not, I'll summarize for now. It looks like there are no items that are really going on, but that we may continue with future discussions on these types of topics. Carrie?
Yeah, before we go on, I just want to make one comment based on the science fair issue. I did speak with Mr. Brown at length after our honors ceremony the other night last week, and he was excited about talking about and growing programs within our school district for those such competitions for science fairs, that we could grow it and a student would actually work on a science project from 9th grade and continue to grow that same project until the 12th grade delivery of that project. So he is looking at that and working on that. So I think that that's something that we should be looking forward to hearing about in the future. Okay, moving on to policy. Let's see. Get my glasses on here. The first policy up for discussion is with Mr. Prokuzak, and it's policy 122, extracurricular activities.
Yes.
I think I was going to let Ms. Gilsbach take the control of that, because I just got that yesterday, the day before, and we discussed it briefly. And there's some modifications I think we need to make, maybe, and I'll let her continue from there, and I'll stay at the podium.
Sure. Some of the reasons that we reopened the policy 122, there were 2 primary reasons. The first was that there is a new law regarding concussions, so we did include language in that to accurately reflect the requirements of the law for that. Oh, sorry. And then the second, in addition to the legal changes regarding the concussions, the second issue that the district was interested in addressing is the legal obligation that districts have to allow charter school, cyber charter school, and homeschooled students to participate in extracurricular activities. Prior to what you're looking at now, the district had not had any clear and specific guidelines regarding those students and their participation, their eligibility, etc. So what you're seeing here are some specific rules and some specific criteria for those students who want to participate. And if any of the board members have any questions about that legal obligation, I can certainly talk to you about that. I would like to draw your attention to page 3. This is a change that the language that's in here is really a placeholder for right now. We have to get some feedback from the board. Prior to this revision, there were no specific academic requirements for participation in an extracurricular activity. With the addition of the new language, the district, it's my understanding that the district is getting a lot more interest from students who are from charter schools and cyber charter schools and want to participate. So that is something that we are recommending that the board consider. The language here states that the student shall not be permitted to attend a school-sponsored activity when a student has one or more failing grades. That we would recommend to change to reflect the athletic policy, which is currently the student must be passing 4 or more courses. But I do want to bring your attention to that because it is optional, and Easton has not in the past even had an academic requirement for, technically board-wise, for extracurriculars. You do have an academic requirement for athletic participation. It reflects the PIAA rules, and we could put in language that mirrors that exactly. In terms of the specific language for the academics and participation, what we would be recommending if the board does choose to adopt language to restrict the grades is we would go to, rather than talking about courses, we would go to a unit discussion because the flex scheduling does create a little bit of a technical issue. It doesn't create a problem. We were talking about that a little bit, how that would fit in, and I think that it really wouldn't create much of a technical problem more than a language change. So, it would be helpful if the board could give us some feedback as to whether or not they're looking for the academic requirements for the extracurriculars in general. And then also just take a look at some of the requirements for these cyber school, charter school criteria to see if those are the types of criteria that the board is willing to accept and set. We provided this language as a legal guidance. There are legal restrictions, but there is some flexibility within those. So, we can certainly answer any questions that you might have about that.
Ms. Gilsbach, Mr. Cuck and I actually met today. The traditional 9-period schedule, the requirement by PIAA, was 4 majors on a weekly, quarterly, semester basis. By going to the block scheduling, that would convert into, and it's in the PIAA language, 2 major subjects. And Mr. Cuck had mentioned to me today that they would be taking 3 courses per day minimum, so they would have to be passing 2 of the 3. That is correct, Mr. Cuck, right?
Yes, students would typically have up to 4, and if they're A&B courses, they can have up to 8 during any given time. If that class meets for a semester basis, the time is doubled, so therefore it becomes a 2-credit course. Therefore, 1 class counts as 2, still need to be at 4, so 2 passing courses would equate to 4, which means they'd be academically eligible to participate.
And that would be the minimum, and that's what we had always followed, even when Mr. Ryder was the principal. You could go above and beyond that. Maybe you get yourself into a legal situation if you go too far above that. I'm not sure. So Mr. Cuck and I had agreed that 2 would probably be our standard in lieu of the 4 that we used to have, and we had 9 periods a day.
But, Mr. Puckers,
Yes.
if I understand the new language, it would say if you are failing any course, you're not eligible. Am I correct, Aaron?
That's actually what we were talking about as the placeholder. This is, we would, if the board chooses to go forward with the academic requirement, we will fill in with language that mirrors what the athletic language is going to look like. It would be my recommendation that you match the PIAA standard. Whatever you set for athletics, that you set the same for extracurricular, but the board can set different standards if it wants to.
We could also increase or exceed what the PIAA language has.
That is
That's
correct.
absolutely correct.
Right. 4 majors currently is the minimum that you must follow in order for your athletes to be eligible to participate in the PIAA. Mr. Cuck and I talked about going 3. He has a little bit of a concern. It's the first year with block scheduling, and what do we get ourselves into if the first year we go to 3 with that block which really equates to 6 majors, and I'm not sure how many each kid would have on a weekly basis to begin with that block scheduling because of how those schedules will all change this year.
One of the things I'll add real quick, and then now I'm going to sit down and be quiet for the rest of the time. One of the things that I will add that I think is important to note, though, is that the PIAA process is a weekly process. So we're not looking at a kid at the end of the year who's failing multiple subject matters and then being allotted to play. It's a weekly basis. So if a kid slips in a grade, doesn't take a test, is absent a day, needs to make it up, those sort of things, I think we need to make sure we compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges. If a kid fails for the quarter, there's a different penalty in terms of their ability to play. But the week